Hello, happy Friday, everyone. My name is Kristen Skelton. I'm the founder of Bud Funding, a social enterprise dedicated to sustainable education. I've been going live every day this week to celebrate Earth Day, which was yesterday, April 22nd. And along the way, I've invited amazing guests, and they've all been sharing their different expertise on sustainability and helping us as a community learn more so we can do better and make simple changes. And today is no different. I have Brooke Capeller with me. And Brooke, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. And Brooke actually as well has also been part of one of Bud Funding's our most recent expo, and it was great to have Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society there with us. So a little bit about Brooke is she is a conservation program coordinator at Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society of Southern Alberta, also known as CPAWS. And in this role, she is tasked with conducting scientific and technical reviews related to various conservation topics, as well as working with local communities and stakeholders on conservation issues in Southern Alberta. So, Brooke, I want to know a little bit more. What does CPAW's Southern Alberta chapter do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So CPAWS, we're a nationwide nonprofit working to protect parks and wild spaces across Canada. So we've got chapters all over the country, and we've got two chapters here in Alberta, the Southern Alberta chapter and the Northern Alberta chapter. And we divide it like roughly at the Red River watershed. So our chapter was born in 1967 out of development pressures in Banff National Park. And since then, we've been involved in protecting parks and wild places all along the southern eastern slopes. The most recent park that was designated was the Castle Parks in 2016, which is down south. Yeah.
And
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. And I know that one of your campaigns, I know that I've seen a lot of signs around the city, and it's a great initiative that people have been able to get involved with, was the Alberta Parks campaign. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about the Defend Alberta Parks campaign, why it was necessary, what its goal was, and what its current status is, or any other updates regarding that campaign.
Yeah, sure. So in March of last year, right before COVID kind of shut a lot of things down, the government announced their plan, and it was called Optimizing Alberta Parks. And what they were planning to do was to remove and or close 175 parks from the park system, which was super concerning for us and a lot of Albertans. I mean, like, our parks and our wilderness are part of our identity, I think, as Albertans. Like, when I go to Ontario or if I'm traveling, like, people want to know about the mountains and the prairies and like the wide open spaces that we have here in Alberta. Like, it's very much tied to our identity. So when they announced that they were going to be closing 175 parks, people were upset, understandably. So Albertans mobilized to start the Defend Alberta Parks campaign, and it really just took off. It was so great to see all of the lawn signs up, and like people in my neighborhood who I never would have expected to be CPAW supporters have lawn signs, and it was great because it really brought people together. And so so after that, the government then announced that they would not be moving forward with that plan, which was a huge win, after all of the pushback that they received from people and hearing from all of these people about how much they love our parks in Alberta. So they decided not to move forward with the plan. And that announcement came a few months ago. I can't remember now when the date was, but the fight's not over, though we're expecting legislative changes this year. So in December, they released their Crown Lands Vision, which kind of hints towards legislative changes in the Parks and the Public Lands Acts here in Alberta. So we're preparing for that, and I think Albertans will be ready to mobilize again to ensure that any legislative changes maintain the protection that our parks currently have.
Mm-hmm. And when I talk to anyone, hiking in our parks is pretty common thing. So in order to take that away is pretty big. And another funny thing was those signs, you see them everywhere, and whenever I see them, they're awesome. And then I was like, because I live in a condo building, so I was like, oh, how can I do that? And then I actually saw a few people put it on their balcony, and I was like, oh, that's perfect. I mean, even though I don't get a large viewership of my balcony, I was like, okay, well, that's still a great way to be part of it. And so what are some other interesting projects your chapter has underway?
So there's kind of two big projects that I'm working on right now. So the first is the coal campaign. So the government announced that they would be rescinding the coal policy, and that was last June that the policy was rescinded. And since then, a bunch of applications went through for coal exploration in across the province, but we are focused mostly in the Livingston area, which is in the Crow's Nest Pass. So yeah, a bunch of exploration projects went through, which is coal exploration is very destructive to the environment. So it involves building kilometers of roads and hundreds of drill sites. It's not nice to the landscape. So these applications went through. And then the government, after all of the pushback from Albertans, they then reinstated the coal policy, and they're now undergoing public consultation on a new policy. So what CPAWS is asking for is a stop to all coal exploration that went through in that kind of time between the rescission and the reinstatement of the policy, and also for more fulsome land use planning in that area that's not just focused on coal. So what I'm working on is, my background is in environmental science and GIS, which is mapping, which is spatial analysis, which most people don't think is super cool, but I love nerding out about mapping and analysis. So what I'm doing is I'm mapping the impact that exploration is having on the landscape, trying to determine what went through last year, what could go through this year, and just getting a quantitative measure of that so that we have some ground to stand on. So that's one. And then the other super cool project that I'm planning is the first 2 weeks of May is the NSERC Science Odyssey Week. So basically what that is it's a celebration of science across Canada. And the events that we're planning are 3 regional events in southern Alberta in Calgary, Lethbridge, and Medicine Hat, focused on nature-based climate solutions. So we've got some super great panels set up in each of the regions of people who are working on nature or climate, and we're going to have some great discussions about nature-based climate solutions.
And if people wanted to get involved in that particular project, how would they do that?
Those will all be posted on our social media in the next week or so.
Okay, great. And are those in person at all, or just all virtual?
No, they'll all be virtual.
Okay.
One day we'll have in-person events.
I know. I'm definitely missing the outside in-person stuff.
Yeah, me too.
What are some of the wins that your organization has had in the past?
So I think 2 really, really big wins this past year have been, well, the first with the parks campaign, the government announcing that they wouldn't be going through with that plan. And then the second one was the reinstatement of the coal policy. Our work is not done yet. We're still going to be pushing on both of those fronts, but those are super great wins for the conservation community and Albertans as a whole.
So let's get back to you. I know you're pursuing your master's. So what is your research about, and how is it related to your work with CPAWS?
So my master's I'm working on a Master of Sustainability is what the program's called. And it's through Brooke University, which is out in Niagara in Ontario. And my research looks at environmental stewardship in the Niagara region of Ontario. So it's going to have 2 publications that have come out of the research. The first one is looking at stewardship initiatives and elements of environmental stewardship and how they relate within initiatives. So elements like actors involved, their motivations to engage in stewardship, and organizational capacity to undertake the work. And neither of these are published yet, so I can't give too much of the findings. But yeah, so that's the first publication. And then the second is going to be focused more on the organizational level and successful stewardship. So asking folks what makes for successful stewardship initiatives, and then kind of teasing it out a little bit more to determine whether there's a difference between organizations that are staff or volunteer based, and how they perceive success. So yeah, I mean, when you work in conservation, everything is super interrelated, right? But like my thesis research and my job at CPAWS, they're kind of like two different hats that I wear. So yeah, I was living out in Ontario doing my research, and then my position at CPAWS was posted. This was in 2019, and it was kind of like my dream job, and I really wanted to be back in Southern Alberta. So yeah, it kind of worked out. So I went part-time to finish up my thesis, and here I am.
When do you think you'll be done?
I'm really, really hoping I defend this summer, because I think my deadline is August to have a defense.
So the research is top secret until August.
Top secret, yeah.
And what are some of the ways we as a community can support our parks and wilderness?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think that there are a lot of different ways depending on what your interests are and where you are. I think the first, like one of the most important things is to get outside, right? And enjoy these places. I think it's so important. And take your kids and your nieces and your nephews and like get the younger generation outside and enjoying nature. I think that that is so important. And then I guess the next thing would be to educate yourself on the issue. So whether that's the parks issue or the coal or anything else that you're concerned about, there are so many great organizations out there that post lots of information on their websites. So educate yourself. And then if you are concerned, please write to your MLA about any of these things and let them know how you feel about decisions that government is making, or even just to say like, hey, I went out to this park and it was great, and please protect it.
Yeah, for sure. I did actually write a letter it was an email to my MLA regarding a recycling issue. I never heard back. So I wonder if I should probably email him back, or I don't know if
resend it.
Yeah. I'll follow up. I will keep emailing until I hear a response.
Yeah.
So one other question, were you always interested in science, like in high school and everything like that? Because me, like, even though I have a master's of science, to be honest, I wasn't particularly great at science in high school. And I think it's just because I had so many different interests. I was always like an active kid, always outside, sports person. But did you excel at science in high school?
I mean, I was about an average high school student, like
I definitely was average as well.
Yeah. I had other priorities when I was in high school. But when I was trying to decide like what I wanted to go into, I was deciding actually between going into environmental science or architecture, and super unrelated. But I don't know what made my decision for me was the fact that I love being outside, and if I had to make a choice between like learning about trees and plants and doing fun things outside or designing buildings, like the decision there was easy for me. And then I went into environmental science and I found GIS, which is mapping, and it kind of like ties in like the analytical side that I really like too, like which is kind of like architecture, planning, that kind of thing, in with the environmental stuff that I'm passionate about. So
very cool. And if people want to get involved with CPAWS or a specific project, how could they do that? What's the best way?
I mean, the best way would be to check out our website and then send us an email if you want to volunteer. We always have jobs for volunteers to do, and we love it when people reach out to help us.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Brooke, for being here with me and sharing some information on our beautiful parks that we don't want to lose. And thank you so much, everyone. If you've been here every day with me, let me know in the comments. And if you have any questions, definitely put them in the comments. If you're watching the replay, give us a #replay. Thank you so much for being with us every day this week, and I will see you next Wednesday. Have a great weekend.